all know that technology has changed the world in so many ways, but I don't think there's anything it's changed more than it's changed the way we date. I'm talking about online dating, texting culture. You text people for days, weeks before you even meet them face to face. You have no idea who these people are. They could be weirdos, they could be murderers. It's an absolute train wreck. I think it kind of sucks. If you are like me and you think like that, I might have the perfect movie for you that came out a couple of years ago called Cat Person. It's directed by Susanna Fogel, stars Emilia Jones and Nicholas Braun. I don't know them from anything besides Nicholas Braun. He played Greg in Succession. He's kind of the same awkward guy in this. Before I even talk about the movie, I need to bring it up. We all know cats kind of suck too, right? Like cat people are weird, dog people are vastly superior. I mean, why do we have cats? Get a dog, come on. What the movie's about, you have these two people, Margot and Robert, who meet each other at a movie theater. And she starts dating this guy who's a little bit older than her, and she goes on to believe that he's probably a serial killer. That's a very brief synopsis of what this movie's about, but what it actually is doing is poking fun at modern dating culture, how we interact, how we get to know people. I personally had a really good time with this film. I thought it was very creative, had some profound things to say. I thought it was funny at points. I laughed a lot. Never heard anybody talk about this film, and I don't know why, because at a time where movies try to be so elevated, they try to say things, they try to always convey a message. I think this movie's well above average at doing so while being a highly entertaining and unique movie. Basically, the plot plays out like this. You have Margot, who works at this movie theater. Robert comes in. He's a regular at the movie theater. Relatable subplot for me. I'm always at the movies. But anyways, he goes up to the concession stand. They get to know his order. He gets popcorn and red vines, and they kind of hit it off. He asks for her number. They start talking to each other. They start dating through text. As they start to meet each other, it starts to kind of highlight the issues that both of the genders have with modern dating, especially when you have that technological barrier. I'm obviously not a woman, but I know the struggles they face when it comes to meeting people on the internet. They're about 30 seconds away from being kidnapped and ending up on the first 48. And then you have men who face an uphill battle because the competition is so stiff, girls demand so much attention through technology, and it starts to get a little bit burdensome that you can't be yourself. You're kind of keeping up an image to some extent, depending on who you meet. The whole thing is just an absolute train wreck. I think dating culture is an absolute disaster right now, so I had a good time with what this movie's trying to say about it. I also thought this movie's opening scene had an interesting, funny little quote, in my opinion. It said, "Guys fear women laughing at them. Women fear guys murdering them," which is funny as it is obviously blatantly accurate, because when women date, they have to fear for their lives. Men have to fear for rejection. But yeah, as the movie goes on, Margot and Robert kind of get to know each other, and they're clearly not compatible whatsoever. They just met through technology. They bonded through text. And this movie does a good job of highlighting that the image of who we are through technology and texting is not who we actually are. Sometimes you can meet somebody through text, talk for days, weeks, get to know people, and it's that barrier of communication that actually makes people feel connectable. But when you meet the person in real life and you get to feel their body language and their aura and how they react to the give and take of what it means to get to know somebody, date, you get to see that there's a lot more layers to dating than just talking through text and sharing mutual interest, which I think a lot of the modern generation in the world has kind of forgotten, if I'm honest. So the two of them do go out, they go to a movie, they're clearly not compatible in person whatsoever, absolute awkwardness every scene. But Margot's constantly forgiving all of the red flags this guy's putting off as a reason in her head to excuse that he's not the perfect person she met over text. I think that's what a lot of people do when it comes to online dating now, which is why there's such a low success rate and people are so burnt out when it comes to even trying. As you'll meet a person through text, you'll feel like you kind of bonded with the person, connected, and then you'll meet them in person and you have nothing in common, or it's kind of a little bit awkward off the bat, so then you just throw them away and move on to the next right swipe. And I don't think that's really a healthy medium. What this movie chooses to do, and I actually thought it was really funny and creative, is she's constantly going through all of the possibilities of every outing with this guy. He's constantly thinking about her exit path, what this guy could possibly do for her, how she's going to end up in his dungeon. It's a creative way to give an insight to how women think about dating that I personally was not really familiar with, obviously, because I would be in the guy situation. But I thought it was done in a clever enough way where it wasn't really preachy, and I had a good time laughing at it. And I think it was also kind of interesting to see the other side of it, what men struggle with when it comes to women. I think how much you enjoy this movie is going to definitely depend on, does the comedy land for you? Does kind of like the satirical commentary they're going for land for you? Because I'll definitely say this, the way I described the synopsis, it's not really a horror movie at all. It's kind of like a romantic comedy with thriller psychological elements to it. If you're somebody who's going into this thinking it's a Lifetime like murderer movie just to a T, that's not what this is at all. It's definitely a little bit more layered than that. Getting past the plot, I wanted to talk about the characters in this a little bit because I think they're all so different that they really sell you on the message of why this film was created. So Margot and Robert are dating, and she has this roommate on campus who's basically a pure feminist. And the roommate is just not down with this whatsoever. She argues on an online message board. Her whole life is virtually connected. The two of them are at ends kind of as the movie goes on, and she's trying to explain to Margot how she's in dangerous situations. Margot's telling her to calm down. It's not that serious. And then you have Robert, who's just this socially awkward guy who gives off major red flags at every single turn. You cannot help but watch this guy and think, yeah, that guy's definitely got bodies in his basement. Why are you going out with him? But as the movie goes on, you start to understand all of these characters and all of their incentives and how they differ and how this really does sell the message home. So basically, you have her roommate, the pure feminist, who's like an encapsulation of modern society. Paranoia towards men, they're inherently evil, do not trust them whatsoever. Then you have Margot, who's pretty old school. She gives men the benefit of the doubt. She's just trying to date. She's looking for something. But she does have legitimate concern to be had. She is a woman dating online. It's like she doesn't really know who this guy is. You can see both sides of it. She has legitimate complaints that are warranted when she's going through these possibilities in her head, but she's not so paranoid and extreme like her roommate to the point where she just has no hope whatsoever. She's completely cut off from reality. Well, I do like that contrast where you get to see the extremity of it, but you also understand Margot's situation. It's just an interesting tidbit I don't think I've ever looked at in this capacity. Again, as a man, it's obviously a different experience probably to watch this movie as a woman, but I do think this movie is handled in a way that is creative and not tacky, where it pokes fun at both the genders equally, because we all know a dude who just gives off red flags. He's awkward as hell. You know this guy is a walking problem. So for all the women out there, you obviously have very legitimized reasons for trusting your intuition, being skeptical of any man you meet online. You have no idea who he actually is. And for the men out there, you just have to accept that the chips are stacked against you. If you're socially awkward, you can't flirt, maybe you're not that good looking. The whole thing's just kind of an unfair balance towards both of the genders, and I think this movie captures it in a very realistic and awkward way. It's not really fluffed up in a Hollywood way. There's a lot of rom-coms or a lot of movies where people meet people, whether or not it goes south or not. It's just very hammed up. It's very phony the way people meet. I found this movie to be authentically awkward when it comes to capturing how the real life dating experience actually plays out. This movie captures all of that awkwardness, and I think the way they converse in the dialogue is very realistic compared to a lot of movies. In this movie, the first kiss, incredibly awkward. The first hookup, incredibly awkward, but also hilarious. I like that this movie was so weird and awkward and so real and authentic with how these people talked. You just don't get that in movies nowadays, and it definitely stood out. For a psychological thriller, I thought this movie had a lot of creative things to say about consent and power dynamics and playing games. When you're in that flirty talking stage of relationships, you're trying to test the water and you're trying to see what you're comfortable with around this person. And it's poking some fun at what it means to be creepy and attractive. You know, the behavior of these two types of people are not that far off. It's just, are you attracted to them? It's also saying a lot about things that are lost in translation nowadays, that technology is so central to all of our lives. A lot of things can just be remedied. If we get off the internet, we talk in person, we communicate. Not really the case. So all of these things are amplified 100 times, made way more difficult. And then when you get to the ending of this movie, I thought it was actually like a pretty genius metaphor for the mutual assured destruction, the path we're on as a society when it comes to gender dating. I don't know why, but it feels like men and women like hate each other nowadays. We're just like adversaries. We're not even trying to work together anymore. And it's like, we're all in this together. Why are we trying to make dating so complicated? It's not a challenge. We're like on the same team. I thought the whole thing and what they're trying to say was actually very creative. It was very witty. It was very unique, the type of movie, the way this is filmed. Again, I wouldn't go into this thinking it's like an old school horror movie, like a Lifetime murder movie. It's more of like a rom-com with some thriller elements. But overall, I thought it was a really creative movie. It really worked for me, and I think it's worth buying on Blu-ray. Yeah, I have no idea where this movie came from, but I think it was better than it had any business to be. If you have seen this movie, comment down below. Let me know what you think. I know it's a couple of years old, but if you haven't already, subscribe. Join me down below. I love talking movies with you. I will see you in the next review. Peace!